you say that.
All right, let's call the meeting to order.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
first item is public comments. Mark, anything?
Absolutely.
Okay.
You won't miss this. I'd like to just remind the Municipal Light Board that we're here for the residents, basically. And what I wanted to express is now that the future agenda item on here is the DPU rate filing. I'd like to reserve my comments at that time. The minutes of December 17th, I haven't seen yet, and I don't think they're issued, so I would like to get a copy of that as well. And I would like to, as the only resident present, get a copy of all the information that's being disseminated to the board, because it's important for the residents to know what's going on. Thank you.
Okay. Dave, I guess I'd ask you, is there any problem with normally?
Have we handed him a packet yet, Stephanie?
I have been told to give everything to Peter, and Peter
I
always has
think
everything.
Peter had it right there. He just hadn't
We're
handed it to him yet.
moving on to the, next will be the minutes, Mark, and there you go, as
Thank you.
usual. We
He was
have
gonna
that
get it in a
for
minute.
you.
Is there any problem with having a packet for him ready to be presented to him at the start of the meeting? I mean, he asks for everything every time, so.
And I get it, thank you very
Yeah.
much.
As we move along, we
Okay,
give
All right.
information
So
as
we-
as
okay.
it comes up,
As it comes up, Pete hands it.
okay, that's
right?
fine.
We've gotten you everything you've requested.
Just hand it over and just back up.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm right behind you.
I think we've had the handoff for 3 years now,
Okay.
Mark, or whatever.
All right. Well, it's just occasionally it seems we forget, so that's why I'm at. Just
Well.
Okay, all right.
The only question I have in regards to, and I understand Mark's concerns, but with, as we go through the, we have a portion of the meeting in which we're talking about receiving public comments. Obviously, this is a public meeting, so anyone who wants to come to the meeting can come. And as far as a lot of these agenda items we have, though, these aren't public hearings necessarily on these items. I'm not saying that there's any problem with having people be able to make a comment or ask a question, but in regards, there is a technical difference between,
Okay, and I'm glad you're bringing it up.
between those two things. I think in this particular scenario, just, I'd be concerned about issues extraneous to the board's concerns, or the board's comments in regards to the non-public hearing items. Just becoming that type of does that make sense?
Yeah, let me see if I can rephrase it so I make
Yeah.
sure I understand it,
Yeah.
the point. Is there a difference between a public meeting and these materials in the meeting being public records? Is that? I
Yeah,
think
yeah,
that's
obviously,
the
everything,
point.
yeah, everything we do is public,
Right,
but that doesn't mean that the public is involved in the debate in everything that
Right.
goes on in what we do.
right. And then I guess that extends to are the materials public, the meeting materials?
To some
Particularly
extent,
the financials,
Yeah.
I think would be sensitive to a degree.
yeah, whether they're, and I think I'd like to get an opinion as to exactly what things are required to be given.
I think it's an excellent point, thank you
Yeah.
for raising it. In fact, I kind of thought of it myself, thinking about that issue. Do we have an expert here who can answer that?
So-
Or at least speak to that?
Well, of course, speaking to an attorney, I was going to say, let me consult with an attorney to get the official answer.
Yeah.
However, I can speak to how we've operated. And what we have is taking public comment at the beginning. And as far as agenda items, we have taken public comment at the end when we have a presentation. We have not gotten into a debate with the public, a back and forth. Take the comment and then let the board deliberate amongst themselves. And we have not allowed a back and forth between board members and the public. We've
Okay.
stopped that. Let them present their case, and then it's up to the board to deliberate amongst yourselves.
Okay.
That's how we've operated.
So,
So,
That's absolutely correct, and I appreciate your comments, because this is a public meeting, and it's posted, and access should be allowed to the residents.
Yep.
And you, Mike, you and I have been on the board, and we've had that discussion. This is not a public hearing, you're absolutely right, but the public has the right to access
Yep.
with their comments and their concerns. So Stan Svensson started this receive public comments, and we've done that on the board as well, and I appreciate that. So this has been an open discussion, and has been an open access to the public. Public doesn't decide to come in, that's their problem. But I'm here for, you know, for my own interest and the public's interest.
so Stan and I did have conversations about, that very question, and at times, he's like, what if they have the same point again? I says, then you're totally appropriate to stop it. He said, nope, you gave your comment on this topic, we're moving on.
okay.
And,
I don't have a problem with that. I guess I would like a clarification in terms of, do we only accept comments at the beginning or as we're going through these items, which, for example, the DPU rate filing is a new item. Mark and the public haven't seen it, nor have we until we get this handout. Do we
Okay.
accept public comments during the agenda item
okay,
as a general practice?
sure. And so, and the question is, we have,
We have. Okay.
yes, we've taken public comment during the agenda
Okay,
on items,
all right,
but we've not debated. We
yes.
just take the comment.
Okay, all right, and so we usually don't then even respond because that would be kind of a debate.
Correct, you respond to between yourselves.
Okay, all right. That
Or
helps.
you'd ask staff a question, you could ask staff to clarify.
Sure.
And then staff will not get into a debate back and forth. We'll give
Yeah,
our
we
opinion.
just clarify.
Yep.
Okay,
Which is totally appropriate.
okay, yeah,
Thank
being
you.
new in this role, and particularly being new to the public, this is my first public service here, is this board. so.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you. If I start to deviate from the practice, would you let me know?
Oh, I'll rope
please?
it back in. And I will rope public in also, it happens, so.
Okay,
I ride that fine line, but I'm not shy about stepping in when I have to.
I
Keep it heavy.
appreciate that. Thank you for the comments and the clarification. Okay, the next item is the minutes.
I move to accept the minutes.
Okay, I would second that, and then we'll open it to debate on that subject. Do you have any suggested changes, comments?
I don't.
Okay. Stephanie, I have two. On page 1, where it says Bill Hayes will be the acting chairman. Nothing wrong with that, but I'd like to add a little bit to it. Continue the first sentence until a third.
So wait, I thought we accepted the minutes, but then,
No.
We haven't voted
The
yet.
way Robert's Rules of Orders work
Okay.
is you take a motion.
Okay.
If it's seconded, then there's
Okay.
debate on the motion.
They didn't
Okay.
vote yet, Stephanie.
We didn't
oh,
vote.
okay, so I just wasn't sure like what, okay.
Yeah, and that would be the normal process. We'll take a motion.
Okay.
We'll second it, and then if it's seconded, then we debate,
Oh, okay,
and then we vote after the debate.
okay,
Okay.
yep,
So, in the debate portion, I would like to add to the Bill Hayes will be acting chairman until a third member is appointed, so that the acting has a end game. And then a second sentence when you're ready.
okay,
Then the full board will select the chairman. So that way the minutes kind of clarify what the process is going forward.
okay,
Okay?
sure.
And then on page 2, under item 7, third one down, no more slush of funds, is that flush of?
Oh,
Flush.
is it it's flush of, so it's FLUSH,
Yeah,
new word of funds, so it's 3 words, Steph.
well, it's slush of funds, the only thing we need to change is slush
The
to
F.
flush.
Right, flush of funds.
Item 7,
Yeah.
the third green dot.
Oh, okay,
No more slush of funds should be flush, FLUSH. Okay,
So I'll move to accept the amended.
and I will second.
okay.
And if there's no more debate, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passed unanimously.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Okay? Yeah, thank you.
Zuberek.
Huh?
I liked it better when you were just the chairperson.
I'm sorry.
I liked it better when you were just
Oh. Oh. You're not off the hook yet. Okay. We next move to the financials. Peter?
Mr. Chairman, today we are looking at the November financials. We've done the reconciliations and adjusting entries that we spoke about before, where we had some, they may not seem quite as up to date as we should.
Okay.
Last month we had September, we're skipping over October to bring us up to a more current look at things.
Thank you.
If we start off at the top of page one and we look at the revenues, we can see that the revenues from the sale of electricity is down approximately 6.5%. You know, the purchase power and fuel adjustment from last year is a little lower, which would reflect that, but in addition to that, the actual sales of kilowatt hours is in fact down year over year. If we go to the second part, which is also some of our revenue areas, the first line, jobbing and contract work, item number 415, we're down $650,000 this year. A lot of that, as I think I've explained in the past, has got to do with things that are beyond our control. Last year we had crews that went out on mutual aid. We get paid for the help, time, and efforts that go into that. This year that hasn't happened. We get paid for subdivisions that are being built on behalf of contractors and stuff. That hasn't happened that much this year, so we're down a considerable amount of revenue in that particular item. If we skip down to miscellaneous non-operating income, item number 421, that is the flush FLUSH of funds. And that is, this year we got almost $1.4 million in that. That brings this whole section of other revenue or other incomes up this year. As I explained last time, when we brought this money, we reached out to our consultants and where this comes from, and that it will in fact be the last flush of funds payment that we're expected. That number is expected to go to zero and stay at zero. So that's a considerable amount of money that in the past we've had, you know, some years small money. As we can see last year we had 129,000 almost, but still that money, that revenue is expected to go away.
Mm-hmm. Could you just briefly explain what the flush of funds was? Now that I mean, it's been pennies from heaven, but now it's not going to stop. Just what was it? I know I've been explained to it in the past.
Town of Danvers Electric Division is a part owner of Zuberek, which is owned by Emwick. The bonds for that purchase to build that facility have been paid off. Under the covenants of the bonds, each participant had to have a certain amount of money on hand at the facility in case repairs came up, that the facility would have the money available in order to do those repairs. Now that the bonds have been paid off, we're not obligated by those covenants anymore, and they sent the money back.
Okay, so that money has been coming back over a period of years as some of the bonds were paid off in earlier years?
Yeah, and they would charge us, on the bills, we would get to keep it to the appropriate level. As a year went on, they may say, well, you need to just give us more money, and then the money would come back as the levels were trued up over the years.
Okay, all right. So that pennies from heaven is over.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
All right, thank you.
If we go to the bottom part of page one, where we're looking at our expenses, our power expenses, which starts at purchase power, item number 555, and ends with transmission by others, item 565. Our power costs through November of this year are $19.7 million, and Last year, they were down last year they were $21.3 million. So we're down $1.6 million or 7.8%. But if we reference back to the revenue from sale of electricity, our revenues are in fact down more than that. So the reduced expense because of the lower cost of power, we've looked at the rate, the money we've been bringing in from the sale of electricity is even greater. So how that all rolls up, if we go to page 2, we can see that the profit or loss through the month of November is $3.2 million, which is $1.5 million less than last year, but still at this point in time, very good. If I take out the power costs from our total expenses and I take out the OPEB, and I'm going to take out the OPEB because as we've talked about in the past, when we brought on the full expense of OPEB, that kind of stilted the financials. So to get a true comparison, I've taken that out because it was a one-time adjustment to OPEB. And looking at our expenses with no power in there, which we've looked at individually, and taking out OPEB, our expenses are up a little over $313,000, or a 3.5% increase, which is certainly it's an increase, but I would call it a modest increase. So it's not as if we are watching our expenses, and they've been kept within a good range. So we're doing well through the month of November without fire loss. If we go ahead to page 4, and you look at the cash, I know there's always a concern about cash. Our cash on this page here, which is our fund stabilization, is $16.4 million, and last year it was $19.9 million. And so that's a $3.5 million decrease, and the big thing that happened there is we made a pension, we got rid of the unfunded actuarial liability for the pensions, and that was a payment that we made to the retirement board of a little over $4.1 million. We believe that that's going to put that money to work to help get rid of that total liability and be better able to grow with the retirement system as opposed to being in an MMDT account in the treasurer's office. On page 5, I always like to talk about the accounts receivable. That's at the top of page 5. Item 142, the accounts receivable is in fact down $441,000. So that's a good thing. We always are working on that to make sure that we're collecting our funds in a timely fashion.
It's awesome.
Well, it's always a challenge. There's always always somebody having a difficult time, and we're always working on that.
Yeah, that's a good job to get that down, that's significant.
Because the lower bills are helping, probably. But.
Well, that will make a difference, but we are actively working on that. In fact, before I came in here today, we're working with our business customers to make sure that they're where we are with them and stuff, so that even though it's a continual program, and she's working with them now as we speak, actually. In the middle of page 5, we've got our depreciation fund, which we can see is $2.7 million. It's somewhat up from last year, but although that may seem like a big amount of money, as we've looked at the planned program, we do a substation, which we've talked about down behind. We replaced the Northland substation down behind the mall. It's going to be a big item, and there's some other big items coming up. So, although certainly 2.7 is a lot of money, it's not really
Not for the projected
yeah.
forecast
So
we have ahead, yeah.
just in between the two, the cash on the first page that I talked about, the other page, we've got a little over $19 million at this point in time, which is down 12% from where it was a year ago.
Mm-hmm.
So at this point in time, Mr. Chairman, everything looks good from our perspective, and we're on course to provide reliable power to the town of Danvers.
I had a few questions I marked, just kind of more curiosity than anything else. Back on page 1, the third item, large customers are down quite a bit more than the other categories. I was wondering, if there's anything that's different, like maybe that solar installation that went in this last year, does that contribute to that? Or are just the large customers are paying more attention and doing more projects to reduce their usage?
Well, looking at the numbers in preparation for this meeting, certainly the large customers, the sale of kilowatt hours by the division to them is down 9% through November. And that also rolls into, the demand for large customers is down too. So now, why exactly that's happening, I don't have a reason, but we are selling substantially less than I would venture a guess. If you want to hear my guess, is certainly businesses do a lot of things to control their expenses.
Sure.
Power is one of the main expenses that you have to have here, so I would guess, just like I've done at my home,
Sure.
they're taking measures to reduce their electric bills.
I was just wondering if there's anything that stood out that you guys might know, either, like the solar project that went in.
We're not aware of any big customer that left or a big customer that changed their operations. Some of them could have changed the shift. They go from 2 shifts to 3 shifts based on economy. Sometimes we know that, sometimes we don't, but we're not aware of any big things.
Okay, all right. Then down under expenses, the 4th line item, system control.
Thank you.
It just seemed to, change a little more than was the average. Again, I don't know if that's anything significant happened there, just, it stood out a little bit. Actually, the 4th line item.
Yeah, I see it's down to $30,000 from $331.
Yeah.
Sometimes on some of these bills, some years they go back and they true stuff up, and we're always catching up. I don't have a
Sure.
exact
Yeah.
reason why that happened.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
But-
But they're outside bills we're getting
Okay, those are outside.
from the grid.
Oh,
Yes. Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, those
All
are.
right. Then over on page 2, about a third of the way down, I forgot my glasses, so I have trouble reading this.
Do you want
What
mine?
is that? Ah, thank you, that helped. Maintenance of line transformers, 595, is 453% or 454% of last year, and then again, the line item under 596, 815%. Again, not big money here, they just jumped up hugely.
Yeah, I mean, we have a transformer maintenance program where we're constantly repairing them and replacing them out in the field to make sure that they're sized, the right size for the distribution system. But we could have some that fail, not according to the plan, and we have to
Sure.
go out and work on those.
Yeah, and these all could have stemmed from any storm-related activity, anything of that nature can really shift these numbers. As Peter
Yeah.
said, we have that TLM program, that's
Yeah.
usually captured under capital, but in the event of a storm or something like that, where the transformer doesn't have to replace and some maintenance can be done to it, that can shift that significantly.
And as you mentioned, Mr. Chairman, certainly a big percentage increase, but
Yeah, small money,
relatively speaking, and,
Yeah.
it's.
not material, as the accountants say.
Well, we don't want it to seem like we're dismissing it, that we're not watching it, but
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's fine.
everything here is expensive to maintain the distribution
Yep.
system.
Yep, okay, oh yeah, on page 5, under liabilities, and this again is a balance sheet, so I'm not sure how significant it is, but down near the bottom, compensated absences, number 243, it went up 11%, and I just wondered if that is that any concern?
No.
Compensated absences.
No, it's not. What we have to do, if we were to, in order to make our books more accurate, we have to accrue the liability that we would pay if if we were to close business at 12/31 any given year, we would be required to pay every employee what they've accrued for vacation time. So that number goes up and goes down as we have more long-term employees that have more vacation.
Okay.
Just by the function of being here on 12/31
Sure.
of a given year, they're gonna get more vacation time the next year. So that goes up and goes down. We're not planning on closing.
Yeah. Let's hope
So,
not.
so that will change again as we prepare for our audit and see what we owe if we were to have closed on 12/31/2019. But that's
Okay.
a regular routine item, but it is, in the financial world, if we were to have closed that
That's
day,
what would have been the liability.
that's what we would owe, yeah.
Okay,
We do pay that out if an employee retires or leaves. We have
That is correct,
So
yes. Yes.
Even if we don't close, we do have, some of it does sometimes.
It does, yes, that's
Yeah.
correct.
okay. All right, thank you. Good explanation. Okay, next item is the DPU rate filing.
Okay, you guys all copied that in your packet?
Yes.
correct? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So,
This is the time to do it, because we don't, neither one of us has our glasses on, so.
oh, yeah. So if you want to sign it first, then
It's
I'll
just
step
a
you through it.
blur.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, so,
I'll put them there so we can either grab them.
yeah.
I'm sorry.
So when we started looking at the budget for 2020, last, I think October, we started, the first projections that we kind of looked at, and Peter just, kind of stepped us through, is revenue has been consistently coming down from slower and slower sales. And so when the final revenue projection for 2020 came in, it showed that we we're gonna be between 1% and 2% less revenue than 2019. So we factored that in. We looked at the retirement benefits are going up in the neighborhood of $300,000 to $400,000 as an ongoing payment that we'll be experiencing year to year. In
I'm
addition
sorry,
to
say that one again?
The retiree benefits,
Okay.
yep.
Yep.
So that was going up, I think it was like $300,000 in that neighborhood. Additionally, the payment in lieu of taxes was increased for 2020 by around from 2.5 to 3 1/8 mil based on total KWH sales. And there's an increasing schedule for that over the next number of years. So we took that into account. Also, as Peter had mentioned, we funded the OPEB, so it was a $4.5 million ballpark out of our stabilization fund. So we'd like to start to, build that back up according to the Baker Tilly audit and our financial recommendations. And additionally, power supply costs are up, but we can talk more about that once we get to the PP&FA. I guess lastly, going through the budget, we had to account for that miscellaneous non-operating income, which was the flush of funds. That boat has sailed, so we can't anticipate those funds any longer. With that, we determined we needed to increase our operating revenue around 0.8 cents. In order to do that, as we have done in the past for the last, at least 30 years, as far back as I could find through the tariffs, we would basically pull the embedded power supply cost from the base rate, and then we'll basically apply that to the adjustable monthly PP&FA costs. So the recommendation is to decrease the embedded rate. But then if you look at page 2, it's in the PP&FA calculation, it is item B.
Yep.
So base period cost of purchase power and fuel per kWh sold will be amounting to 0.0245 per kWh sold for residential and 0.0265 per kWh sold for general service and municipal. So that'll be applicable to all
And
rate
those are
classes.
both lower.
Both, correct. So
We're
we'll-
taking money out of the embedded purchase power, and thus it will go into the PP&FA, which we're gonna see now.
Correct, yes.
Okay.
And I believe everybody got a summary of the,
Yeah.
so that kind of spells it out in a little more detail.
Yep. So this is driven by the budget, the factors you just mentioned. The retirees OPEB, the pilot increasing, the flush of funds ending, lower sales. And then in the PPFA, you also mentioned the open access tariff.
Yeah, please don't underestimate the sales piece of that.
Oh, I'm not, yeah.
Okay, okay.
Yeah. So, those are the drivers, they get highlighted in the budget process and appropriately, and then having to deal with that, then the decision-making process within the business says, okay, we need to reduce that portion of the embedded power costs and move it over to purchase of power. Okay.
Correct. Yep.
Did I read back to you, or do I understand what you're
Sound,
trying
yeah,
to tell
sound
us?
like you have a good grasp of it, yeah.
Okay, because, as we sit here as an advisory board, we represent the public along with Mark.
Sure.
And, a degree of oversight, and so it's incumbent upon us to understand and make sure we understand what's happening.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, all right. I did have one question about this as well. We're in the process of writing a number of policies. And
Right.
one of them has to do with the adjustment of PPA, PPFA. I thought I had heard that we were going to put in there that we would only adjust the PP and FA quarterly.
So we have a draft to present to
Yeah,
you folks
actually-
during the PBNFA item on the agenda.
Oh, okay.
And what the goal was is to work to try to keep the PBNFA, to establish it for one level for the whole year if we could.
Yeah,
Do an in-depth review of it twice, at the beginning of the year and then 6 months in.
okay.
But we'll still review it monthly just to make sure nothing's off track.
Okay, because that was the question that was kind of raised in my mind, is this in conflict with the coming policy? And is that a problem?
So what this we need to do to cover operating costs.
Yeah,
And this is working in conjunction with the cost of service study that we have going on, and,
Yeah.
Clint and Peter have been in consultation with them, providing them number. So
Sure.
this is covering operational expenses. On the next agenda item, when we talk about PPNFA for this year, our goal is, in accordance with the policy, to try to pick a PPNFA number today that would set us up for all of
For the year.
20, or
Right.
as near as we can do. So that's where we would adhere to that policy in the next agenda item.
okay. My question though is, in here, we're reserving with the state and DPU that oversight
Mhm.
function as opposed to the board. We're reserving the flexibility to adjust monthly.
Yep.
Okay.
We need to
We're
keep
gonna
that.
issue a policy, which is only an internal policy, which says we're gonna try to do it once or twice a year.
Yep,
Okay.
but we'll
Those
still
are not in
maintain that
conflict.
right.
We still have the ability, because I don't
Right.
think we should tie our hands.
We can't, right?
Yeah, to make a monthly adjustment as needed.
Right. Seabrook went down next month, there's something big happened.
Yes, okay. All right, so there's no inherent conflict there. And it sounds like a good management policy to maintain maximum flexibility with the state here.
We agree.
Okay, all right, I think I understand. Yes, sir. Public comment
Public comment.
or question?
A question, more likely. In plain language, I'm looking at this rate, establishment of a rate. Is this a rate increase or is this a rate decrease? Are we talking about the base rate or are we talking about the PPFA? It's a combination, I'm confused.
Okay,
And
you've
I think
you've
the
asked your
public is
question,
confused.
and I will ask Clint to
Thank you.
clarify that for you.
So, the decrease that you're seeing in the proposed tariff, that 0.8% is going from the fixed fuel cost component of that rate and be moved into the floating portion, into the monthly PPNFA calculation clause.
So as I understand it, this is a rate increase, whether we like it or not. It's 0.08 cents or, and that is being buried in the PPFA portion. So the public is getting a rate increase,
Okay,
one way or
Let me
another.
try to clarify it as a fellow citizen here.
There you go.
What I understand is this action per se is neither an increase nor a decrease. Per this action takes embedded fuel costs, power costs, lower, and moves that over to the operating costs. Am I correct in that?
Correct.
So this action per se is neither an increase nor a decrease. It reallocates a portion of this fixed part of the bill from power supply to operations. As a kind of background answer to that, we have talked many times about any business has fixed costs and variable costs. Our rates as structured do not do a very good job of covering fixed costs, and that's not untypical in any business. So the budget realities say that we need to take a larger portion, allocate a larger portion of the fixed costs here to the operating budget. And in order to do that, we have to reduce the purchase power portion of that fixed cost. So that's a reallocation. Having said that, we will now get from the fixed cost portion of the bill less money toward purchase power. So that requires an adjustment to the PPFA, which in fact is an increase that the public will see. They will see a reading. Did I summarize that okay?
Better than I could have ever done.
Okay. That's the answer to your question.
Thank you very much, but I still want to express my view and the public's view that this is a rate increase. Whether we like it or
And it will be
not,
discussed here.
fine.
If you wish, you may make an additional comment when we
Thank
get
you.
to that agenda item.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Is there any other discussion at the table on the purchase power and fuel adjustment tariff filing with the state?
I'll make a motion to approve and accept as provided to us.
Okay, I will second that motion. Any further discussion? If none, we will vote. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. The motion is passed unanimously. Okay, so that,
Yeah, so we need duplicates, actually filled out by the board.
okay.
Correct.
20th. No, 21st. 21st.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
What's the date of that?
So actually, the next agenda will be Clint again with PPNFA?
Well, no.
Oh,
you
to me,
decide
oh, I'm
that
sorry, oh, yeah.
For
Oh my God,
signature.
yeah, sorry.
I can't help remembering the motion we had a while ago that we made a motion that Stan should sign that fraud. And I was fully in favor of Stan signing. I might have second thoughts now.
I tell you, the worst day as a selectman was when we used to have to sign all the common victualers and liquor licenses.
Yeah.
And I was always the junior member, so I always used to say, which one's sick? We'd go to a bar and they'd say, which one's yours? I'd go, mine's the last squiggle.
Yeah.
Because by the end, we'd just be, you couldn't stamp it, you'd just be just going like this with every one that you had.
Yeah.
Or bond issues.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, so
All right, so we're finished with that item, and we'll move to the PP&FA.
I have them.
Okay.
let the record show.
So moved and accepted.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I won't say I don't later.
It's on the page.
Yeah.
Yeah, once Steve signs it, we can file the detail.
That discussion also covered this detailed letter you had.
Correct, yeah.
Oh, and I did have, before we move on, I did have one question on that. What's the demand charge? Down at the bottom of page 1.
Oh,
Is that for-
so a demand charge is on a business.
Okay.
So So businesses their electric rates work differently than the residential one, whereas their meter is a different meter. So the meter registers what their demand is during the month. The demand is when they hit their maximum power, their maximum power demand. When they want the most power from us, that meter pegs it. We then they pay a demand fee for that rate the next month.
Oh,
So it works because the economics of it is, if you have a business and you use whatever you use for KWH this month, we have to be ready and have power available for you to use that same demand the next month.
okay.
And so if you pay the demand, you pay a fee on that. Many businesses have done things to reduce their demand, because demand a lot, like if you start up electric motors, there's a big demand at the startup,
surge.
it pegs the electric. That's why they've gone with the VFDs, to ramp up electric motors now, and there's a lot of things, and it translates exactly into why we have a temporary generator, because we're trying to lower our annual peak,
Mhm.
because that's a giant demand charge we get from the grid.
Yeah, and we normally talk about that as the capacity charge we pay, is that correct?
Well, it's capacity and demand, two different things. So we pay a capacity, so the demand, so for us, we pay capacity charges based on our demand,
Okay.
yes.
Okay,
So
so it relates to the.
It relates to, we don't charge our
Yeah.
customers capacity charges, we just charge them a demand fee.
Demand charge. Okay, but those two are related.
The two are related, correct?
And we don't charge residential customers. That-
No.
That's,
Yep.
so I guess if I can try to understand it the best way, the meter's spinning. For our residential customers, every time that meter spins once, no matter how fast it does it, we charge them for that spin.
Yep,
With our business customers, not only do we charge them for every time that meter spins around, we also charge them extra when it spins really fast.
yes, we do, yep, we have to.
Yeah, it makes it easy to understand.
Remember, we gotta ramp up certain equipment size and be able to handle these businesses where the residential are more sort of steady, where you could have a massive spike, so their usage throughout the month could be very little, but they could just have a massive spike where we have to size the equipment accordingly, so.
Yeah.
Even though they're solid state, nothing spins inside anymore.
No, I
The old
like
ones,
that.
yeah,
It is-
it's a great analogy.
Yeah.
Yeah, the analogy.
I missed that.
Okay, then on page 2, Clint, I had a couple of, 3 more questions.
Oh, sure.
On the municipal general service rate 1, MG1 and MG2, who pays that? Those, I assume, are to
So
the
the
town?
town buildings, yeah, the schools.
Okay. What's the difference between the two? Who pays the difference between the two? Or is it not significant, it's all of the town of Danvers?
I think that's structured around, Peter, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's based off, basically the prompt pay discount is folded into municipal rates.
Correct. Yes, so there is no, yes, we're not, yes, it's built into the rate, that the discount for the town of Danvers Department of Public Works, they will get it despite if they don't pay it within the 15 days, because we have a lot of verifiable processes that we have to go through to get the payment here. The difference between MG1 and MG2, MG1 would be a municipal building that uses less than 10,000 kilowatt hours per month, and therefore would not be charged the demand, similar to a G1 account, which would be a business like a storefront down in the square
Okay,
that
so
was.
relatively small.
Would, yes, in fact, smaller than some of our residential customers, so those do not get a demand charge. MG2 would be greater than 10,000 kilowatt hours every month, and therefore they would get a demand charge, because we would be required to have enough electricity if they used it on a monthly basis. Similar to, exactly the same as a G2.
Okay. And then the last one is the received energy charge, where this is the net metering. I understand the received energy charge, that's what we pay them, but what's the annual wholesale power charge? What is that?
So that's essentially the PPNFA, the clause component, the floating component, with a factor for the NIPA public power discount. That applies exclusively to residential class of customers. So, but it's within 1/100% of the PPNFA.
So really not very
So
significant.
effectively, it's making the cost for the energy is pass through to the customer, basically.
All right, thank you. Yes,
If I
sir.
may. You offered me a comment at the PFFA.
Yes.
In
plain language, what is the increase from last month to February?
Okay, we actually haven't got to PPFA yet. We're
Well-
just about to start that, so let's say,
Okay, that's fine, I'll wait.
So, no, okay, is that your only question? What's the
No,
increase?
that's one question.
You're gonna learn it in just a minute.
Okay, I will wait patiently.
Okay, all right,
Okay.
thank you.
Not everybody's on the edge of their seats.
Okay, now we're ready to go to.
Wait for
we
Clint to
go.
build the suspense.
Yeah.
That's a first right there.
Well, I remember when I was a young
If only it was
man.
going down,
Yeah.
then I'd like it, Clint.
We'll wait with bated breath.
Okay, now we're ready for the PP and FA.
It's all
He's
built
really
it up
super
at
excited
the
about
gut.
this. I think the enthusiasm. So if everybody wants to go to the second page, I think that's just a graphical kind of guy. I think it's easiest to kind of see. So similar to the financial statements, we're closed out through November with, exclusive of the OAT. So we're still waiting for November and December to close out the year on those. With that in mind, as we've kind of seen the trend all year, our annual KWH sales are about 3% lower than we had forecasted, which ultimately results in close to a 5% reduction in overall retail dollars. So right there, that's about a $1.1 million deviation. That's so you can really see the orange line is the actual based upon the orange bar, which was the forecast. Then if we want to turn to the power cost though, similarly, the power costs overall for 2019 are down almost 7% from what we had forecasted and budgeted for. So although the revenue was down, the power supply costs are also down. So we're still looking at tracking out to hitting about 1.2 million at the end of the year. And again, I want to keep in mind the oats still haven't come in for November and December, and those can swing pretty wildly. So we like to keep that number. We don't like to pin that down until March when both of those are closed. So yeah, so the top graph, like I said, if we going through January collection, we are slotted to land at about 1.2 million in the over/under fund to close out 2019. Then to come into 2020, below the graph on the bottom of the second page, that's the projected power supply costs and revenues. With the recommended increase that I'm about to go over, we'll start the year at that, assume 1.2, that's the blue line in January. And if we can hold the proposed rate through the year, we're slotted to land right around 800,000 in the positive. And again, those numbers are good because the oats can swing $200,000 to $300,000 monthly. So that would track right along where the policy we're about to hand out would ideally like to land around the $500,000 positive mark at the end of the year. So to go into the recommended rate is approximately 1 cent higher than the previous rate. So if you look at page 3, I have the historics to go back to 2013 for the
So
people.
before we
So,
change,
yeah.
so on the graph pages, so
Yeah.
if everything goes true, if it's 1.2 at the end of this year
Yep,
and 843 next year, that's a net, even with the rate increase, we took 400,000 out of the bank and gave it back to the customers.
correct.
Okay, right, thank you.
So yeah, we're still, exactly, yep.
Okay.
Okay, now can I clarify that?
Yes.
What I've heard you say in the past is that we are required to return to the customers the 1.244 that you're projecting.
Yep.
We won't know the final number until March.
Correct.
But basically, that has to go back. So we return that to the customers
Right.
through our rate projections, through this bottom graph, if you will.
Exactly.
We actually return that 1.2 to the customers.
Yep.
But then we plan to have enough in our rates based upon these forecasts so that we would accumulate 843,000 next year, which would be returned the
Which was
following year.
rolled, exactly.
Okay, so we are returning
Mhm.
all of that each year.
Right,
What we accumulate one year, we return the next year.
Right.
And then we hopefully accumulate more so that we then return that the following year,
correct.
correct? Okay.
Yep, exactly.
All right. Could I just ask a question? And it's on the bottom graph on that page.
Mm-hmm.
I just did a simple, to my understanding, the way the rates and the way we get charged and the rates are structured, where we try to make it level through the year, in general, the peaks are in the hotter months.
Correct.
And our rates in the hotter months would tend not to cover the cost of the power within the month, as a kind of general overall statement. So the colder months would tend to
Be fully
over-collect,
hedged.
if you will.
Yeah. Typically, that is true.
Typically.
For 2020, we actually are a little long on a couple contracts, so we will actually, we're fully hedged for our projected peak through some of the peak
Yeah,
months.
yeah.
And we'll actually be selling into the market in some instances.
Yeah,
Where
that was
we'll make
kind of
money.
the comment,
Right.
the cold months, which I said January through April, are typically the cold months. In general, all four of those, except for March, we're collecting more than we're paying. If you look at the bar graphs, the green
Right.
bars are higher than
The blue, yeah.
the blue. In the hot months, which I chose to call May through September, two of the months, August and September, we're actually collecting more than we're paying, which surprised me.
Correct, yeah, that's where our contracts are a little long in the market, as they say.
Okay.
So we're actually a little overhedged for our projection. But as Dave said, it's a benefit, so we'll be buying the power to fix, 7 or 8
Sure.
cents. We'll be selling back in at, much higher LFP prices.
Okay,
So that's what you're seeing in the August and September months.
okay, so that's
what
related
it's
kind of to
doing.
the solar installations, is that what you're saying?
No, our whole portfolio,
Our whole
the
portfolio.
whole portfolio combined,
Okay,
based on our reduced sales numbers,
yeah,
we have a little bit of extra capacity in August and September, based on an anticipated weather trend. If there's giant heat waves in August and September, we won't see this as much.
Okay, all right. And then again, toward the end of the year, October, November, December, which I characterize as cold, where we think we might typically over-collect, only in November do we over-collect. Is there a balance?
Yeah, that's when
Is that structured to the?
yeah,
But overall, what I thought was interesting, 6 months, the revenues are over, 6 months, the revenues are under the cost. So I thought, okay, that's clearly balanced, and you're projecting 843,000 gallons or 40. So, I mean, it overall for the year, it looks great. I just thought it was interesting to look at the weather patterns and how we typically think the rates are structured, and how the typical experience would be that, some of the months aren't what you'd expect. Okay, just a comment. Okay,
Okay.
now we're ready for page 3.
Okay, so, we can kind of look at historically, I found this kind of interesting. If you go back to 2013, this was back where they would make monthly adjustments, and you can see there's some pretty significant swings.
Mhm.
I mean, if you go through from April 13 to April 14, you go from collecting 7 cents to going down, dropping 2 pennies, 2 cents. I mean, it's pretty significant, and then it
Yeah.
swings way up through 14 and 15, up to, 8 cents for non-residential. And then I think it looks like it went to the 6-month kind of tracking, and then as we come into 17 is when we kind of flattened out for most of it. You can see July 19 where we did the reduction last July, and then you can see in February where it goes back up.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to note that, although they are, going up 1 penny, they are still they're still below the 7-year historic average for the PPNFA. So although yes, it is an increase, it's very much in line historically with what we've needed to collect. And with that, if you wanna go to the bottom, the last graph, so that
So,
is.
before we go to the bottom graph,
Sure.
before we think, 17, 18, it's been great, but it's also been relatively stable weather patterns, relatively stable market conditions. We haven't had giant power plants change or go, and it happened. In the 13s and 14s, it was unprecedented change in capacity rates and markets and stuff on it, which was driving power rates up and down on a regular basis. So that's why we keep the flexibility. We can't guarantee for 20, despite all these average projections, if the market starts going crazy again, we may be forced to be going up and down. Because all we have is what's best in front of us. But at the very least, we're really trying to look out. We can run through a lot of different ups and downs for at least 3 months. 6 months is hard, but at least quarterly, we can run through a lot of changes
Okay,
without big problems, right, Pete?
Yeah,
okay.
and like you said, there's a lot of stuff that's out of anybody's control. I mean,
Yeah.
it can change these things in an instant.
Okay, what you just said kind of raised a question in my mind. We're very dependent, we get our forecasts from E&E and ISO. And, were they doing a poorer job back here? Have they gotten better over the years so that we're getting better forecasts? And that allows us to do these kind of stable rates?
So I'd like to say we are doing a better job working with E&E, ISO, and everybody on analyzing it. Clint and Peter's staff have put together the pass-through charts of all this data, charts to combine it in a very simple manner. It is easy, and look at those averages. So I think we are doing a better job tracking it.
So we're doing better, and you think they're doing better with their forecast as well, or is it totally?
Let's hope they are.
Okay,
Yeah,
all
yeah.
right, okay,
So we have multiple sources that we balance out.
okay, all right. Before we leave that, there's one question that we have to ask as the board. And that is, we have $15 million in a rate stabilization fund. Why are we not using that to offset some or all of this increase?
So last year, we used savings of $4.1 million. So we just gave back 20% of the reserves.
Okay, explain that. Are you talking about
The
the pension
retirement
payment?
fund, right.
Okay.
That came right out of like.
The rate stabilization
The rate
fund.
right out of that, so
Okay.
we just made a very large contribution. Before we make any further changes into that, we believe we need to get the cost of service study done, make sure that we're covering operational costs, and then working with this board and the town manager, establish our levels for the thresholds, how much free cash we wanna keep on hand. We have numerous consultants that have recommended keeping our cash levels where they are or even increasing them. So for a
Okay.
utility our size, we're not overfunded with our cash reserves. And
Okay.
that was one-time money, once it's gone, it's gone.
All right, say that again.
That
What's
was
the
money
one-
that was, it's in the bank, it came from
The
various.
4.1 now you're talking about?
No, the 15 million.
Oh, the 15.
So the 15 million is money that got in the bank 20 years ago for
Okay.
doing different power contracts, and numerous reasons it got there, but it was one-time funds.
Okay,
And once it's gone, we're not doing anything with the rate to recover that right now. So it's not gonna build back, so we need to be very, very cautious how much we spend of that 15.
okay, I have my own opinions on that, but I
Okay.
feel I am required to ask that question.
We're really gonna nail it down, when we sit and sign to it, this is where the policy of Danvers Electric is gonna be on cash reserves. When we officially sign that policy, then we'll really know.
Okay, in the absence of a policy, on a very superficial level, I have to ask the question. We have a rate stabilization fund that's pretty healthy, $15 million. Forgetting for the moment that as part of our total reserves, Baker Tilly suggests they be higher, but forgetting that for the moment, we have a rate stabilization fund, and we're sitting here discussing a rate increase. Okay. Why definitively are we not using a rate stabilization fund to stabilize the rate and avoid an increase?
I think when we're looking at why we're doing this increase,
Yeah,
it's to compensate for a fixed cost increase, the way we operate on a daily basis, going forward for the foreseeable future. So we can
Okay.
have a fixed source of revenue to make those fixed expenditure, excuse me.
okay,
Rather than using, as David said, our one-time funded source and depleting that, and with no policies in place right now to refund that, we wanna kind of leave that healthy where it is, I think.
okay. All right, earlier I kind of reworded something you said to make sure I understood it.
Sure, you're good at it.
I want to do that again to make sure I understand, and then hopefully the public would understand.
Sure.
Okay. The way I would reword that, if I'm understanding, is what we see is a structural change in our finances. This is a longer-term situation, and that has to be budgeted for and dealt with financially on a structural change. This is how our business and our market are going to work for the foreseeable future. rate stabilization fund, in absence of a policy, policy would probably say it would deal with, I'll use the word temporary, non-structural. Something changes dramatically that was not anticipated. Seabrook goes down, we have a new oil embargo, whatever, natural gas embargo, whatever, that would be expected. One, it was unforeseen. Two, probably not permanent, and requires a more immediate reaction capability. And that would be the kind of situation in which we would apply the rate stabilization fund. Is that a reasonable rewording of what you said?
Did you get all that stuff? Yes, I would say, yeah, very, yes,
Okay.
yes.
So we're doing a rate increase to deal with a structural long-term change, if you will.
Correct.
The 5 factors we mentioned earlier. And thus we consider it appropriate to make a rate change as opposed to applying rate stabilization funds, which are a one-time fund and not easily recoverable. It would not be recoverable without a rate increase. Is that-
Yes, absolutely correct, yep.
Okay. All right. I think I've had my questions answered. Do I hear a motion to
Just quickly, because I, also on this particular issue, and I, the way you described it, I think it's perfect in regards to that.
Thank you.
And I think if you look at that third chart, that purchase power and fuel adjustment chart, that, to me, the only time we would want to use the rate stabilization fund would be if, because of those reasons, we would otherwise be required to raise the rate beyond 8 cents, if that makes sense. Because 8 cents is basically the highest, or 7.5 cents, is really the highest we've had to go over the last roughly 10 years.
Yeah.
And so anything within the range, although potentially not desirable, is palatable.
Mhm.
I don't think we want to use the rate stabilization fund until or unless we get beyond the palatable
Okay.
area.
That's a good point.
you know.
Okay. Yes, sir. You have a question or comment?
Both.
Okay.
The question is, looking at this documentation that was given to me, what is the actual percent increase of the PPFA from to? Because I'm looking at 2 numbers here and they don't seem to be different. And that's my question of what is the percent increase from, I thought we were at 0.05669 previously.
4,669.
So it's a 20% increase then. Am I correct?
Well, yeah, correct in the
Percentage.
adjustable percentage, right. So not of the total rate though, just of the adjustable.
Correct,
percentage.
it's PPFA. And what we're doing, we're basically moving the rate increase from the base to the PPFA because we want to bury it someplace that we can adjust in the future as well.
Okay, stop. I would object to your use of the word bury,
Well, it's
okay?
It's embedded.
You are representing the public, this is public comment, but it doesn't mean we have to take insults.
Nobody's insulting anyone, I'm
I
just,
object to the use of the word bury.
then I would rephrase it, embed it
Thank
into the PPFA.
Okay? It's
However,
not being buried, it's being discussed in a public meeting.
Absolutely.
You're televising it.
which is
It
fine,
is not being buried. I
then
think that's an inflammatory term, and I resent it.
it's embedded.
Thank you.
However, your comments, Mr. Hayes, have been very accurate in what has been happening with the, and I call it free cash or the revenue that's on hand in cash. Over the last 3 years, as you guys have mentioned, that I've been attending these meetings, over $20 million has been spent on projects or items that do not relate to the revenue that the public is paying for their electric rates. So your comments about rate stabilization are totally accurate, because the public has not seen any of the benefits of the extra cash that has been accumulated, and congratulations on accumulating it, because that's the great thing. But now, we are faced with a 20% increase in the PPFA, which is basically a rate increase for everyone in town. And the thing is, why are we not sharing that excess revenue that has been accumulating with the residents who are the ratepayers, and basically they carry the brunt of this company? That's my comment.
Thank you for your comment. Okay. Do I hear a motion to accept the
So moved.
PPFA rate? I'll second the motion. Any further discussion from the table?
No, sir.
Okay. All in favor of approving the PPFA?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. Motion passes unanimously. Okay, we're ready for the engineering report, Mark.
Yeah, so nothing significant as far as milestones to report on. Ready to proceed with the engineering aspects of the substation control house. Just finalizing a few things. As far as Northland Sub, we're still working on the easement talks, those are still underway. And Water Street is still progressing as far as framing and prepping for the reconductoring. But, again, nothing as far as milestones, but I'd be more than happy to answer any questions.
Okay, what was the last subject?
As far as Water Street?
Yeah.
So that is, we're
Just
still progressing.
Brief overview of what you're doing.
So we're reconductoring Water Street. So what happens is that island area in the back is actually sort of stranded load. So what we're doing is we're running express cable from what's happening off our Danvers circuit, and we're running express down to this, so we can actually have a tie, so we can pick that up. So it's all reconductoring spacer cable. And then we're also reconducting the existing open wire on the circuit that actually runs down Water Street and feeds that presently now. So what's gonna happen is, I know it's kinda hard for me to try to describe this, but if I'm going from point, so basically, you know what Water and Liberty
Sure.
meet?
Mhm.
No, excuse me, Endicott and Water, excuse me, Endicott and Water meet.
Mhm.
So what we're doing is we're actually, one circuit comes down Endicott Street, goes left, the other one comes down, goes right on Water. So what we're doing is we're actually tapping this one that goes left, we're running that express all the way down to that island area, so we can actually have a backup in that area.
Okay,
And then
so what you're doing is building in redundancy.
We're building in redundancy, correct.
Okay.
And we'll also, what we're doing is the circuit that goes down Water Street presently now, which is Endicott East, that circuit is open wire, it's old construction, it needs to be reconducted, so we're also running spacer cable down there as well, as far as, to make it a more robust circuit.
Okay, so you're replacing,
Existing, open
Existing.
wire construction,
okay,
correct.
so somewhat outmoded would be a good word?
Yes, exactly, we've had issues down in that area in the past, so we're just trying to make this more of a robust circuit.
Okay, so
and
this
just have
would
more-
improve
So we can have the redundancy,
reliability?
absolutely.
Okay,
So that's one of the major projects that we're presently underway with. It's a large project as far as all the pole replacements involved with it, framing the poles, pulling the strings so we can actually reconduct it. So it's one of those projects that isn't like a short duration, so it's long-term, which is why I say we haven't had any significant milestones in a sense, because we're just still continuing to frame at this moment. And again, with the easement, as far as Northlands, we're still working with the sort of the representative of that area. We've made some significant headway as far as him agreeing to be able to work with us, so the talk is actually, it's really on their plate at the moment now, as far as do they agree with the area. And it sounded verbally like they were, so at some point, we're gonna hopefully draft some language and work with them to really follow through with that. So we're hopefully gonna hear something from them, I would expect in the next week or so. And then again, with the substation control house, we're looking to progress with the engineering. So what we're doing now is we actually have like a boilerplate sort of template that we're just finalizing, which really protects us due to the significant amount of funds associated with it, because it's in the realm of $600,000 just for the engineering side.
yeah,
And that's, the civil, electrical, protection and control, so it's all aspects, so,
okay.
the structural, so. Once we finalize that template, we're gonna have them sort of sign off on it, so they obviously can make sure that they follow up on what they're supposed to deliver as far as that end goes. and then we can proceed with that.
Okay.
And we expect the engineering to continue through this year into next year, then we can hopefully get the construction aspects as far as procuring the material. And then the hope is to have the control house completed by the end of next year at some point. So, yeah, so unfortunately, like I say, there's no major milestones where I could say we've
Yeah.
done this, because these are sort of, you know, these are things that we're in for the long haul for.
Sure,
But we are still progressing.
okay,
Um,
thank you, that, the higher level explanation was, I think I could understand it, I'm guessing.
Okay,
You
great.
gotta remember, you
Yeah, I'm
know.
trying to describe you there a little bit like this. I
Well,
hope that.
you gotta remember the board makeup has changed with Jim
Yeah.
and Stan, you had two electricians here, sitting here, so they could
Yep.
understand you completely, but, you know, now we got a lawyer and a
No,
guy
by
who-
all means, anytime you guys have any questions, I can, like you said, need be, I can always break out a map after the fact or get something.
Yeah.
Or if
Remember, I
need be-
still think that things are spinning.
Yeah.
so-
Yeah.
Well, I like that approach, you know, but I can always do more to make sure you guys have a better understanding of anything.
Thank you. I do
That's a
have,
technical term thing.
You know?
yeah, I do have one question that I think Stan would have asked. I drove through Endicott and Water there,
Yep,
and I saw a pole that looked like, I don't know if it was Tiny Tim's or something. There was a pole there that had been cut off about 3 feet from the ground, and then it had two 2x4s or something holding it up.
yep. So what
I assume
happens
that's
is-
part of that project, it caught my eye.
Yeah, so what happens is when we
And
do
it's the
pole
kind of question
replacements.
Stan would have asked.
Yeah, so when we do pole replacements, you know, typically that's like considered a cut and kick in the sense that we're actually removing the pole, putting the new pole in basically the same pole as opposed to digging side by side with it.
Okay,
And then what happens is they chop the bottom, because they have to pull the pole butt out.
yeah,
And then what they do is they lash it to the old pole.
okay.
And then what happens is it goes in the order of everybody transferring, you know, where it's,
Sure.
you know, we're the first to transfer, then you have, Comcast, or, you know, it could be
Yeah,
fiber,
I know
then
there's a lot of different
Comcast,
cables
and
on that
Verizon's
pole.
usually the last to transfer at the bottom. So what happens is the pole butt will stay in place until everybody
Has transferred
transfers.
out.
And then we have this system in place called Engine, which is Joint Utility Notification Systems. And that will notify the actual utility that is ball in court, basically saying, it's your turn now to transfer. We've completed our work, now your turn. That's why everybody
Oh,
can continue that.
okay, yeah,
Yeah.
so that we don't have conflicts in terms of.
Exactly, so trying to avoid the point of saying, why do we have a double pole here for 3-4 years? I mean,
Yeah.
everybody is notified when they're, you know, sort of on the pecking order as far
Yeah.
as transferring, so,
Okay,
yeah, that's
Alright.
what that's about, you know, and, but, if you have any other questions?
no, that's it for me. Okay, thank you. That's everything? Okay, we're ready for utility director.
Sure, so we're working on, Clint and I are working on the revisions to the dashboard, probably at the next meeting, we'll have the one that has the complete, you know, we're looking to get one that has some different milestone dates in it, more like we do project management, without trying to get into the minutia of the whole.
Sure.
Sure. We have actually we have software, like every single project we have, we can run it on a whole project management software, but it's complicated, you have to work it on a daily basis. We're trying to get something to the board that has some pertinent dates to it, but yet something we can update once a month, and, so we're working on that. But I will run through, Mark, talked about the control house at Station 42, and for the lawyer, we are working through the contract on the design contract on that, what the pieces of that, get the lawyers involved, just because it is a big design fee project, so we gotta work through that contract. The Clint and Peter are working hard on the cost of service study. Over 70% of the materials that they've asked for, we've provided to them, they've had numerous conversations. So it's, now that we're through the rate thing, it'd be great, we'll have an update from them and some dates on milestones from them at the next meeting, when they're gonna have deliverables for us. So work that through. On our policies, did we pass out the draft PPFA?
Yeah, I have it right here.
So this is, if everyone could write, I don't know if we hit it with the drafts, oh, we did, good.
I did, yeah.
So this, we talked earlier about the policy we were gonna have to establish PPFA and look at it each, you know, on a, this is a draft of that, which I'm not sure if you guys have ever seen or wanted, but so we wanted to pass it out today, so that you guys could look at it, think about it, and then we would like to really have this on the agenda for the next meeting. So we can start really adopting these policies.
Good morning.
The other one that maybe will come next is the investment policy. That's how we invest the money that we have. So we're talking with the the people doing the cost of service study and seeing if that's the next one we can pull off. We're trying to pull as many as these off and get them approved as we can, because we know the reserve policy and unrestricted cash
I'm sorry,
really need,
what was the second one? I was
oh,
just-
the investment policy.
Investment, yeah, okay.
That one we wanna try to pull off and do separate, and not wait until we get the cost of service study done. I'm sorry.
Okay. No, it was me, I was half listening and half writing down what you said on the other one.
Good. Okay, so we're caught up. So, the town naming policy, we talked about at the last meeting,
Yes.
whether or not to have this, conference room named after Stan or something. This is what we have for a town naming policy, and it was developed by the Recreation Committee, for town facilities and fields. So even though it says town recreation director on it, stuff, we've used it for other items.
Okay.
And so I can get, that's for you guys, and so it would be appropriate for the board to bring that forward. And it would go through, from me to the town manager, and then eventually to the board of selectmen. Is how, so we can, wherever you see recreation, you can say, Danvers Electric, how, we've asked for a town version of this, I haven't been able to find it yet.
They don't have it.
They don't have it yet, so,
No.
so we
I-
use,
you know,
so we use this one.
That one's fine.
And you'll see, it's,
I sort of know it, so they,
Okay, sure. Okay, I'll look at it after.
and so I don't know if I guess what we need is for the board to think about, do you wanna wait for a third member to get on to do this, or you guys let us know what agenda item you want this, when you want this to be on the agenda. If it's the next
Okay.
meeting or the one after that,
I think we should wait till the third member comes on.
That-
Makes- yeah.
I'm okay with that.
okay. So we'll make a note for Stephanie that keep it on the, in the background until we get a third member.
Sure.
And then bring this back as a potential, agenda item. So if the board wanted to vote on it and send it to town meeting, obviously you guys couldn't, you guys would have to, do that here at a board meeting. Individually, you could do it anytime.
Sure.
But as a board, if you want the 3 board members, then we'd have the agenda item, do it that way.
Okay, yeah, that works for me. I
Yeah,
don't
it
think there's
does.
any
Yeah, I don't wanna,
particular
I mean,
urgency.
I think technically, despite the town manager could probably name
Yep.
things down here, whatever he wants to name them.
That's right.
The selectmen have no real oversight in regards to the operation of this particular
Right.
operation, but,
And he's very intelligently chosen,
but I
let's
think
have a
it's,
policy
but I
on
think
doing
it's
that.
important
instead
to
of-
follow the policy from
Yeah.
that standpoint, and I don't oppose that, so.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah.
I think you would want to have a process and a policy.
Yeah.
Otherwise, everything, everywhere will have a name on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
The only thing I don't wanna have happen is I would not wanna be put into a position where, somebody voted it down, I guess
Yeah.
would be the worst case scenario. So although I think we feel strongly that
yeah,
it makes sense, we probably should get feedback from other people in the policies
Sure.
process
yeah.
to make sure that we don't have any major stumbling block, which would result, because that's the one thing that we
Yeah, that
couldn't
that
have.
would be humiliating.
So I will throw out one other item that came, is we don't have plaques in this room recognizing the
Yeah.
commissioners, both water and water and electric. So that's another, that's something we could potentially, order as plaques to go on the wall that recognize our commissioners, not only when they pass away, but when they get off the board.
Yeah.
And have a history of that. So that's something we could think about also.
Yeah.
Not quite the same level,
Boy,
obviously not the same.
think about it, how many hundreds, years?
I'm not sure how
Could be
far
a
back
big
we can go,
plaque.
but yeah, it's, I don't know. I'm a history guy, so it's.
They used to have, I know at the police station, they used to have all the pictures of all the chiefs.
Yep.
Going back to the, I don't know if they still.
I think they're still there.
I've been there for a long time, so. but- so
That's
the
probably
rest of-
good.
Rest of it.
The landfill solar projects, that's going on with that engineer, nothing big to report there. The project that's coming up that we're dealing with is our peak savings generator. So, and the question on that is, the board knows we've had a temporary generator that we bring in, we put it at one site, and then we move it, every year we move it to a different site. We have to move it because of to keep that as regulated as a temporary generator. So, we know we're right on the edge of what we're allowed under the Air Emissions Act. And so the concept of having a permanent peak generator, we're researching that. We have one firm that is running the numbers for us right now and are close. They have a draft proposal, but it's not final numbers yet, on having a firm provide us with a permanent generator, 4 megawatt generator. They pay for it, build it. We enter into a purchase power agreement with them, where we buy the power generates for 15 years, and then at the end of that 15 years, we own it. So we would use it for peak savings and perhaps use it as a peak generator, where at the peak times, when power is most expensive, they could run it and put power back into the grid. So right now, we're doing it through one company. What we plan to is, once they finish theirs, we plan to compare it, get 2 other similar proposals, and see. The capacity markets aren't what they were 2 years ago. We were saving, almost, what was the biggest year? 400,000, $500,000? We were saving $500,000. Now we're trying to work to save $200,000. And so we need to be careful that we're not putting all kinds of effort in to save just a little bit of money. However, we also want to prepare for the future, and having a permanent peak generator gives us a lot of options for the future. And if we can do it in a way where it can be as near to guaranteed that we won't lose money on it, then all of a sudden that's looking better for us to keep it there for future options and make a little bit of money on it.
Just as a sort of a comparison in regards to the energy output, what would be the difference between what we would expect to gain from the solar field that we've talked about at the landfill, and what we gain from the temporary generators?
How big's the landfill solar?
It's about 1.2. So
1.2 megawatts.
Yeah, about 25% of what the generator bill
So,
is.
yeah, so it's 1.2 megawatts, and then this would be 4.
Yeah.
Solar, we really can't count on solar to be a peak generator, because one of our peaks was a cloudy day. And so we lost the solar on that, and so we have we have over a meg of solar on right now, and we lost, right at the peak, we lost it all. And so, that's the different part of that analysis also.
Is this part of the solar, and part of the solar is because we can't really save it, right, is what it comes down to.
Right.
How expensive are like, again,
Megawatt batteries.
Huge batteries.
They're still pretty pricey.
So Wakefield just did a battery project.
Yeah.
And we're in close contact with them and watching how they work through this battery project, because they're having some operational issues. So
Yeah.
we're watching them and watching the numbers on this to keep in mind, are we gonna have big batteries? Are we gonna get in the business of encouraging homeowners to have their own batteries? Do you have a battery back on your garage that we can help you disperse at certain times? So we're doing a lot of work on batteries. Because of the expense of buying them, we're not ready to pull the trigger yet. Does that sound about right, Clinton?
Yeah, definitely.
Good.
Yeah, when I went to the conference
Oh, yeah.
a year and a half ago, there was a municipality out west that did a big battery project. And the payback was like 7 years.
Yeah.
And that was with a couple of big grants that they got from the state and federal government. So, if you look at return on investment as a payback period of 7 years, it's not a particularly attractive.
Yes, and I'd assume that the battery, the energy output available to the battery, once again, is dwarfed by what you can produce by the generator. So the idea, which would be ideal, we continuously produce the solar, we put it into our backup batteries, we save it until we need it, and then we utilize it for those. It's just not practice, it's not practical.
Yeah.
So, and we do have one personnel change. We have Anthony Calciabetta has, right now, he's sent in his notice to leave to go to Eversource, to the private sector. So Anthony had been working in tech services, 20-year veteran of the division, and most recently went into the position of when we created the new, what's it called? Energy.
Health, safety, environment, and
Health,
maintenance program manager.
Health, safety, environment program maintenance.
Yeah, health, safety, environmental, and maintenance program manager.
Thank you.
So, so right now, I don't, it's,
Where is he in here?
Can you point him out, Clint?
He's under engineering.
Under engineering.
See, under,
Oh, yeah, Anthony
There you go.
Calzada? Okay.
So I think the offer from Eversource is something we probably can't compete with right now. So we'll be looking to start that recruitment.
Okay.
Anthony's done a great job in enhancing our safety program. We had a good safety program, and he took it and really, when you say, Mark, he took it to the next level for us.
yeah, it was a job that we newly created. We kind of morphed into something where we had all the engineers at one point were doing a little bit of everything. So I was saying, we can't be having the engineers try to focus on safety. So when Niles retired, kind of helped create, I created that position where, looking at that to get the HSE, saying we need somebody who can focus on safety, because that's obviously such a major priority within an
Sure.
electric utility.
Sure.
And it was one of those ones that, was basically saying you needed to sort of take this and run on your own a little bit to make it what it is. And he's done a fantastic job, helping create policy, just working with the guys, because he's really just, obviously, he's just a go-getter, and that's what you needed in that position. So he's done a fantastic job, morphed it into what it is today. So hopefully we can get somebody else to replace him, and hopefully continue with the progress that he's made with it.
How long was he in the job?
He was there 2 years, I think in November it was, I believe. He was in there for just over 2 years.
Yeah, it seems like something I remember, I was here either right,
He
when you
might have
filled
been
in or right
just
after.
creating the
right?
position, yeah.
Yeah, because I came in December for a meeting, and then I was officiating in January as
Yeah,
well.
so that individual deals with, again, all the safety, running the safety meetings, dealing with all the training of the, working with Stephanie on dealing with all the training for the group, working with the testing of all the equipment. They deal with also all the maintenance projects, like the pole testing, anything specific like maintenance wise, as far as like we're looking to do like anything with regard to the transformers, stuff of that nature, so.
Anything that
individual-
would be a hazardous test.
Yeah, exactly, because the environmental aspects of things, so they would deal with all that.
So the other personnel issue that we talked briefly last meeting is that Peter's had one retirement in his office. One of his lead people, Gary Pierce, has retired. And we are actually looking at the restructuring Gary's position somewhat to pick up those duties and create more of an assistant business manager. So Pete has a true assistant so he can start grooming for the future. And we're working on that job description and how that would be right now. And lastly, I'm not sure if we mentioned, but I want to make sure we knew this, the electric vehicle charging stations at the Hobart Street parking lot and the Elm Street parking lot, those are operational. Do we have the ability to check those meters and see
Yeah.
if anybody, how much we got? If we could report at the next meeting, how much power they got used,
Yeah, definitely.
and maybe just keep a chart on that?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good
Do
idea.
have we seen cars charging?
I'm not sure, as soon as it was coming out of my voice, I was thinking, I'm like, hey, has anybody used these things yet?
Might be a very quick, I think the number is 0.
Yeah, no, so,
I think I saw somebody at Hobart. Yeah.
Did you?
Imagine.
Yeah, I think so.
suddenly, I gotta make a point to look, right, now it triggered my head. And actually, the town manager and I had a discussion the other day about what do we do about encouraging electric vehicles. We've talked about different options and trying to get people there, and maybe, we have modest rebates right now for it, and perhaps we really look at more aggressive rebates or incentives for people to get into the world and make a business decision to spend Danvers Electric spends some money up front to really encourage this. Braintree's throwing a bunch of money at it, they've worked, so Clint's in contact with them, and I know Bill down there, and we're gonna see how they're making out. And obviously, we're pretty concerned, we don't wanna spend money if this is just gonna not happen, but if we think we can really encourage this business, we're gonna take a look and see what kind of business decision we can bring before you guys.
So you wanted to talk to Braintree?
Yeah, we already are, yep.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Good.
And
Yeah,
others.
Jeff is, yeah. Good.
That's all. Peter, anything else I missed? Clint? Good. Mark, anything?
Okay.
That's all we had, I think.
All righty. Board members, closing questions and comments?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Well, since I'm acting in place of Stan, I have to, can I borrow the glasses?
Yes. I don't know.
This may take a few minutes. I made sure that I did extra homework more than I usually do, so, okay. I came up with a bunch of questions, some of which have already been answered, but, okay, on the org chart, I was just curious, Mark, this one I guess would be for you. I'm used to looking at org charts and I see the lines, you know, indicating reporting relationships, and there are some that have no lines here under the line crews. I was just curious as to why there are no lines.
It's probably just funded. I think it's just stated.
Oh, okay, you know, normally they indicate reporting relationships, who's.
So on the
I think
line,
it's just-
so on the line crews, Bill, so there's a lead person, that's Jeff King, who runs all the line crews.
Yeah,
And then there's headline workers and then line workers.
okay, so.
Every crew-
It's just missing lines. Okay, yeah, there's a lead, a headline worker and a first-class line
Correct.
worker, but some of them didn't have lines
Oh, they
indicating they
said the lines.
reported up,
Okay.
you know, so I was just curious if that was significant or just an oversight. And then, there was one line worker floater, but who also had a headline worker, and I assume the floater just, if he goes to another crew, if somebody goes on vacation or something.
Yeah, no, the floater is basically just a lower
Lower
level
level.
of a first class. It's below second class.
Okay,
So it goes apprentice, third class, floater,
okay,
second class, first class. So they just came at a lower level and they're progressing. So what happens is basically the headline worker will have anyone from an apprentice up to a first class lineman with them,
okay,
depending on the experience that we have in-house.
sure,
For the most part, we have a lot of first class. We have,
yeah,
actually, we have three individuals who are less than
Work.
first.
So we
Yeah,
have three
yeah.
people we're working up through the system.
going up to, you know, they essentially start like an apprentice and work their way.
Yes, and some of them come in a little bit higher depending on their
Yeah,
experience.
okay,
So we would like to have all first-class linemen, if we
Sure.
could,
sure,
but we, have, we're working some up.
yeah, any.
Headline workers, we have that number set, that's how many
Yeah.
crews we have, that
Yeah.
sets a crew number.
Okay, all right, yeah, I was just curious because the lines appeared to be missing, so I was like, maybe, and then I saw the word floater, so I thought, well, maybe he's kind of the vacation really guy or something. So, okay, this is just a rhetorical question, which you may or may not choose to answer. With our sales going down, should we reduce the workforce? Should we go to 5 crews? Or have one less tech services guy?
So
Does
we've looked.
lower sales mean less work?
So with the question of, so line crews, if you look at the history of Danvers Electric, we've had 5 line crews or 6 line crews. And it doesn't really reflect on sales so much as how much work can we do in-house versus what we contract out. And right now, the work that we're doing in-house more than pays for the 6th crew. And versus comparing, to hiring Powerline Industries to do the work we need on our capital plan, it's very beneficial.
Right.
If we had another, or actually each time, if we had a line worker retire or someone leaves the line, we go through that, it's called hiring freeze waiver process of evaluating,
Oh, the town
should
actually
we
has a
stay at,
process?
yeah, we have a process. And that's when we take a look at, should we stay at 6 line crews or go back to 5? Which way should it be?
Yeah.
And it really depends on how much outside work we have to do.
The work doesn't go away just because the revenues are declining, because we still have to build the structure to be able to
Right.
handle everything, so,
Yeah.
as David alluded to, if we're not actually having the workforce in-house, we'd be spending more money utilizing Powerline. We use them to some degree on some aspects,
Sure.
but we'd have to use them a lot more, and the cost differential is significant using contractors over having in-house, along with the experience level.
Yeah,
So we go through the same exercise with the engineering department. How many engineers should we have? How much work are we doing? Are they more than offsetting themselves with avoiding having consultants?
sure.
So we go through that. Most recently, when we hired Ed Bandar, we hired him to fill a spot. We carefully went through, should we fill this spot, or can we do without this, and hire consultants part of the time? We went through that financial analysis.
Okay, good, good, very good answer. I think, it's incumbent upon us to ask the question, and
Oh, sure.
that's a very good answer, so thank you. Okay. I'm trying to remember, did we ask for a copy of the Steve Bartha memo on the pilot payment increase? Did we ask for that at the last meeting?
Oh,
I know it was discussed, and I haven't seen it, and I thought we asked for it, so I guess Can we
Is
get
the
it?
memo on the what?
The increase in the payment in lieu of
Clint, is all we have
taxes.
that one,
We just have a note sheet basically, yeah.
that, you know what, let's show Steve, or you can show Steve that note sheet and see, cause it's got his, where he has his vision of the pilot.
Yep.
And have him take a look at that, say that, and you can say, the MLB was asking about it, would you like us to present this, or what he would like us to present?
Sure.
So we'll have Clint ask Steve,
Okay, so, all right, so next month,
cause it's kinda like just his worksheet exists right now.
okay.
So I'm not sure if that's exactly how you'd wanna present it to you guys, or you might wanna put it in a memo form.
Okay.
So we'll have Clint ask for that.
Sure, okay. All right, again, it's, in the scheme of, our total budget, probably not that significant, but it's a
Oh, it's pretty big.
significant change.
Oh, God, yeah.
So, I think it should be at least, looked at.
Well, this year, the pilot combined with the health insurance, those were $500,000, that was
Yeah,
over,
it's,
over $500,000, right?
it's significant.
What's the number with those two?
Pilot loan was like, about 200,000.
That was two.
Or the retirement was 3 something, so yeah, over $500,000.
So over $500,000.
Yeah, so, okay. I guess you covered this, progress on policies.
Oh, yeah.
So you did mention that. Dashboard, you mentioned dashboard. I had a meeting just with Clint to kind of get acquainted, and that was one of the questions I came up with. In my background, we use dashboards quite a bit.
Mhm.
And we actually tried to picture, like a dashboard in your car, where you'd have multiple gauges, and as much as possible, they're visual, so that people can look at them without a technical understanding. And certainly not a bar chart, as you mentioned. Just to bring it up, to ask you guys to do some more thought on it. When I look at the mission statement, we talk about reliability, we talk about low cost, and providing excellent service to our customers. And so when I think about those things, what do I think of in terms of what might a dashboard look like? Well, Clint's charts on the PP&FA are excellent, particularly the one that shows our costs compared to, Middleton and Peabody and Eversource. And to me, those would be ideal if you had like a dashboard section on the website.
Is he okay?
And run the restaurant.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So those would be the kind of things that I would think of. We talked briefly about what other things might appear, and outages was one, where you might come up with some kind of graph, and maybe it's a bar graph that shows how many outages total we had in 13, 14, 15, 16, so on. Are we having fewer outages? Duration of outages, number of customers affected by the outages, whether it could be in customer hours or days, or, and again, these are just thought provokers as to what you might want to do. I remember one of Stan's things was communication to customers. How well are we communicating with customers? My personal opinion, you guys do an excellent job here. And, it ought to be visible to customers, how good they have it, based on the job you guys are doing. I mean, I can remember, when I first moved to Danvers, you see on the news, we had a big storm, and, all the towns around us were out for hours or days. Ours was out 2 minutes, it just, it's night and day in my perception as a customer. And I think we should be communicating that,
Okay.
so. And then even, a thought process might be the pension benefit liability, comparing, what we've done compared to other towns, other electricities, if the data is available, I don't know. But, and maybe that's just because it's financial, maybe we don't even do it, but it would show, what were we paying annually, now we don't have to pay, we made the investment. It's just a thought, okay, you guys think about it, if you would please, and see what you come up with. I don't think you mentioned Smith School. How's Smith School solar moving?
Oh, it's combined with the landfill project.
Oh, it's,
Oh,
okay,
so,
okay.
so the school itself, the project, we're pouring foundations right now. So it's still,
How long is it from us?
oh yeah, we're a year and a half away from having the building done. So, so we're pushing on the solars, it's the permitting of the landfill, which is number one, getting that going. And then, once that permit process, then we'll be able to vet out, we'll get the construction plans out of of Smith School and start designing that array.
Okay. So.
Once the permitting gets underway better on the
Yeah.
landfill.
Yeah, so we're in the permitting stage on the school, so, okay. One thing we used to do is have goals for the year, and I don't know, as I've sat here for 2 years now. You guys are working on so many things, I don't know if you need separate goals. But sometimes they're useful in terms of if the business publicizes a list of goals for the year, it helps people in their daily decision-making as to what do I work on today? Do I line myself up with one of the business goals? And policy, policies could be down there ways, policies are one of the top 5 goals. So, yeah, if I've got some work I can do on policies, maybe would be, I'll spend the next 2 hours on policies. Yeah, I just think they're helpful, but nothing more than that. And then,
So on goals, so we've never had anything formalized.
Yeah.
The board, obviously, but we've kind of kept the key topics. And
Right.
those seem to
And
be,
that's why
let's
I
push
kinda-
forward on those.
Yeah.
And right now, I guess our goals is to complete the cost of service study.
Yeah.
And then to follow that up with our financial policies. Last year was the efficiency audit. That was our goal, to get that
Yeah.
done. Individually, the managers, we all have individual goals for the year
okay,
that have been set in discussions with the town manager. So
Okay.
we have those that
Oh,
are
so you do that.
established
Okay.
as part of our rating for the, yeah, I'll have to think of how much I wanna talk about this, but
yeah,
that's,
if
we
it
have
would be
those.
appropriate to do at the board level.
Yeah, correct.
And again, to me, it kind of just fits in with the whole communication with the public.
Yep.
The dashboard idea that the public can see how reliable our system is, how cost-effective our system is, what a bargain they're getting on, the rates as they are, even with the increase. And again, the outages, my perception, as I say, up until we had this most recent one, I think, I've been here in Danvers since 2002. I think that was the first significant outage we had, was when we had the big October storm. I don't remember anything that went over like a half an hour in 18 years in town, so. I mean, to me, we have a great story to tell.
And that goes
everybody.
back with, again, having the in-house folks who really have a knowledge of the system. Because when we
Sure.
breed these people internally, they live and learn the system, and they know exactly, when we have issues, we know
Sure,
exactly how to report to it, how to
Sure.
deal with that situation.
Yeah.
As opposed to when you have like just contractors, it's,
right, yeah,
you
yeah,
know, it's a lot more of
Sure.
a challenge.
yeah, we got more to learn
Yeah.
in the midst of it.
Not that the service was ever bad
Yeah.
in town comparatively, but the efforts that were made in the late 90s and early 2000s in terms of adding the redundancies and adding the, whatever, it's 41K, that all, that stuff made a huge difference in terms of outages and the
So,
ability to deal
so
with the
you bring up an
outages.
excellent concept on the outages, and we will talk about it at the next meeting. There are national indices on it. So
Okay.
there's a whole, Clint and I just haven't talked about
Yeah.
everything's spinning in my head right now and stuff we've done in the past.
Yeah.
So I need to have a conversation with Clint first before
Sure,
we.
yeah.
but you
Like I
bring up a
say,
good
it's,
point.
I see our role as one more of asking questions
Sure.
than,
That's a good,
anything
very
else.
good question.
So, okay. And then the last one I've written down was, any idea on the new board member timing?
Oh, so the town manager has discussed 2 potential board members with myself that he's evaluating. And he's going through an evaluation of at least 2 people that I know of right now.
Okay.
So we met last Friday at our regular meeting, and he talked about 2 people he's looking at. That was as late as last Friday.
Okay.
So he knows we need a new board member as soon as possible.
Sure, okay. All right, that ends it for me. Anything else you covered?
No, move to adjourn.
Oh, next meeting?
Oh, next.
Oh, yeah, next meeting.
Yeah, sure.
So, so 17th is the holiday. We could do the 18th, this day after the holiday, it kind of messes us up a little bit. I guess
Sure.
we'd prefer the 25th, if that worked for you
As far as
guys.
I know, that's okay.
Pete and Clint, you guys, mind?
Yeah.
That doesn't, yeah.
Does that work
I
all
don't-
right?
I don't see anything.
It's always nice when we have the day before to tie up any, you know,
Yeah, oh, yeah.
get better, a little better prepared.
So today was oh yeah, we had that discussion last month, because this day was the day after our.
Right, we just went, yeah, so.
So, yeah, okay. Yeah, with just two of us. Yeah.
Right.
Okay, yeah, as far as I know, that's fine
Good,
with
so
me.
February
I'll-
25th.
Steph, I'll send you an email.
Okay, just throw it on a
I
Saturday.
don't think there's
Sunday,
anything. I forgot to bring my calendar today. I forgot my glasses today. So I'm very forgetful.
That's unacceptable. Mark that
Okay.
down.
All right, so next meeting is February 25th at 8:30.
Excellent.
Do I now hear a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
I'll second. All in favor?
That's not.
Aye.
Stand adjourned at 10:19.